Fans didn't scream. They didn't cheer. For a few seconds, they simply froze. Because no one was prepared for what Dylan Wang said next, and even fewer were prepared for how naturally he said it. It wasn't shouted. It wasn't exaggerated. It wasn't meant to shock. And yet, in that single moment, everything changed. It happened during what was supposed to be a routine public appearance. Cameras were rolling, reporters were doing their usual rapid-fire questions, and Dylan Wang looked relaxed, almost unusually calm. He had just wrapped up promotions, the atmosphere was light, and no one expected anything out of the ordinary. Then a question came up about Shen Yue. A familiar name. A familiar topic. Something he had been asked countless times since Meteor Garden first aired. Most fans expected the same old answer. A polite smile. A safe response. Something vague about friendship, teamwork, or mutual respect. Instead, Dylan paused. Just for a second. And in that pause, you could feel something shift. When he spoke again, his tone was steady, unforced, and dangerously honest. He referred to Shen Yue as his woman. Not joking, not laughing, not correcting himself afterward. The room went silent. You can see it in the footage if you watch closely. People blinked. A few reporters hesitated, unsure if they had heard him correctly. Dylan didn't rush to explain. He didn't backtrack. He simply continued speaking, as if what he had said was the most natural thing in the world. Within minutes, clips began circulating online. Short videos, screen recordings, slowed-down replays. Fans replayed the moment again and again, analyzing his expression, his body language, his tone. Was it intentional? Was it a slip? Was it a joke taken out of context? Or was it something far more revealing? What made the moment even more powerful wasn't just the words themselves, but the timing. Dylan and Shen Yue had spent years carefully navigating public curiosity. After Meteor Garden, their chemistry became legendary, but so did their restraint. No public confirmations, no dramatic denials, just distance, professionalism, and occasional quiet interactions that left fans guessing. And that's why this moment hit so hard. Because it didn't feel planned. It didn't feel like fan service. It felt like something that had been held back for a long time and finally slipped through when he wasn't guarding himself as tightly. Fans immediately began connecting the dots. They remembered how Dylan used to glance at Shen Yue during interviews, always waiting for her to finish speaking before answering himself. They remembered how his demeanor softened around her, how his laughter sounded different, how his confidence turned into something gentler when she was near. These weren't things you could script. These were reactions that came naturally. Over the years, there had been countless rumors, quiet sightings, friends mentioning overlapping schedules, small coincidences that fans dismissed publicly but discussed endlessly in private forums. Every time speculation grew too loud, both of them would retreat into silence, letting the noise die down on its own. But this time was different. This time, the words came from Dylan himself. Social media exploded almost instantly. Fans across different countries reacted simultaneously, many typing the same thing. Did he just say that? Some were shocked. Some were emotional. Some admitted they had always believed something was there but never thought they would hear it so clearly. What stood out most was the absence of panic afterward. No emergency statements. No immediate clarifications. No frantic attempts to reframe what happened. Dylan continued with his schedule. He smiled. He answered other questions. He carried himself with quiet confidence, as if he knew exactly what he had said and had no regrets about it. And Shen Yue's response, or rather, her lack of response, spoke volumes. She didn't rush online to deny anything. She didn't post cryptic messages. She didn't fuel the fire or extinguish it. Instead, she continued her activities as usual, calm and composed. Fans noticed small things, though. A soft smile during a later appearance. A slightly brighter expression when asked unrelated questions. Nothing obvious, nothing confirmable, but enough to make people wonder. Longtime supporters pointed out that this was very much Shen Yue's style. She had always been private, always careful, never one to use rumors for attention. If Dylan's words had crossed a line she wasn't comfortable with, fans believed she would have corrected it immediately. The silence felt intentional. As hours turned into days, the narrative began to shift. Instead of asking whether Dylan misspoke, fans started asking how long this had been real. How long they had been protecting something precious from public scrutiny. How many moments fans never saw because they happened away from cameras. Industry insiders weighed in carefully. Some suggested Dylan's comment reflected a new phase in his life, one where he felt more grounded and less afraid of public opinion. Others speculated that the two had reached a mutual understanding about no longer hiding behind ambiguity. But what made fans emotional wasn't speculation. It was the feeling that this wasn't about drama or headlines. It felt personal, almost intimate, as if Dylan had momentarily forgotten the world was watching and spoke from instinct instead of strategy. Many fans revisited old interviews after that. Old footage suddenly felt different. Lines that once sounded playful now felt layered. Moments that were dismissed as coincidence now seemed intentional. Even the way Dylan used to talk about future happiness took on a new meaning. One fan comment summed it up perfectly. It didn't sound like an announcement. It sounded like a truth he forgot to hide. And that's why the moment continues to resonate. Because in an industry built on control, timing, and careful image management, authenticity is rare. When it appears unexpectedly, it feels powerful. Disarming. Almost fragile. Dylan's words didn't scream certainty, they whispered belonging. As days passed, the internet slowly calmed, but the conversation never disappeared. People didn't move on to the next rumor. Instead, they kept returning to that moment, replaying it, discussing it, holding on to it. Because it felt like more than a slip. It felt like a glimpse into something real. Whether Dylan and Shen Yue ever choose to confirm anything officially no longer feels as important to fans as it once did. That single sentence changed the way people see their bond. It reframed years of restraint into something protective rather than distant. It suggested that maybe the strongest relationships are the ones built quietly, away from applause. Fans didn't freeze because they were shocked. They froze because, for once, the truth felt closer than fiction. And sometimes, that's far more powerful than any official announcement. What followed after that moment was something no one expected. Instead of chaos, there was calm. Instead of damage control, there was silence. And in the entertainment world, silence often speaks louder than denial. Fans waited for agencies to step in, for statements to be released, for someone to label the moment a misunderstanding. None of that happened. And the longer the silence lasted, the heavier it became. People began to notice how Dylan Wang carried himself afterward. He wasn't avoiding the topic, but he wasn't chasing attention either. His confidence felt different, less performative, more settled. It was as if saying those words had lifted a weight rather than created one. He laughed easily in later appearances, spoke thoughtfully, and seemed unusually at ease with himself. Meanwhile, Shen Yue's quiet presence became a focal point of discussion. Fans analyzed her schedules, her interviews, even the music she shared online. Nothing screamed confirmation, but nothing contradicted Dylan either. And that balance felt intentional. Supporters who had followed her for years recognized that when Shen Yue is uncomfortable, she withdraws completely. This time, she didn't. Instead, she showed up. Calm, grounded, unbothered. Some fans began to speculate that the reason this moment felt so different was because it wasn't new to them. Perhaps the public was only catching up to something that had already been understood privately for a long time. That idea alone shifted the entire narrative. Suddenly, the years of distance didn't feel like avoidance. They felt like protection. People started revisiting the early Meteor Garden days, noticing how quickly Dylan and Shen Yue built trust on set. Cast members had once mentioned their natural rhythm together, how scenes often required fewer retakes when they worked side by side. At the time, it was brushed off as good chemistry. Now, fans wondered if it had always been something deeper. Old behind-the-scenes clips resurfaced, showing subtle moments that once went unnoticed. Dylan adjusting Shen Yue's mic without thinking. Shen Yue quietly handing him water between takes. The way they instinctively stood close without leaning into fan service. These moments didn't look staged anymore. They looked familiar. What struck fans the most was that neither of them ever used their connection for clout. In an era where public relationships can skyrocket visibility overnight, they chose restraint. They chose silence. They chose to let their work speak louder than speculation. And that restraint now felt like proof of sincerity rather than secrecy. Industry observers noted that Dylan's statement didn't sound impulsive. It sounded unguarded, as if he had reached a point where he no longer felt the need to compartmentalize his personal truth from his public image. That kind of shift doesn't happen overnight. It usually comes after years of reflection, growth, and certainty. Fans also pointed out how Dylan's wording mattered. He didn't say someone special or a close person. He didn't wrap it in ambiguity. The phrase he used carried ownership, not in a possessive way, but in a deeply cultural, emotional sense. It was protective, familiar, confident, and yet, he didn't follow it with explanation. That restraint made the moment even more powerful. Because if it had been a publicity tactic, it would have been followed by noise, interviews, clarifications, headlines fed by agencies. Instead, the moment was allowed to exist on its own, unpolished and unresolved. Fans began sharing personal stories about why this moment resonated so deeply with them. Some said it reminded them of relationships that survived quietly while the world speculated loudly. Others said it felt refreshing to see celebrities choose dignity over dramatics. Many simply said it felt real. The phrase "his woman" became a turning point in online discussions, not because it confirmed a relationship, but because it revealed intention. It suggested commitment without spectacle. It suggested closeness without performance. As days passed, the conversation evolved again. Fans stopped asking, "Are they together?" and started asking, "How did they protect this for so long?" The focus shifted from curiosity to respect, from gossip to admiration. Even those who were skeptical admitted something felt different this time. There was no urgency to debunk it, no rush to dismiss it as fan imagination, because the moment didn't rely on interpretation. It relied on tone, and tone doesn't lie easily. Some fans said the most emotional part wasn't the words themselves, but the way Dylan said them without checking the room for approval. No nervous laughter, no quick glance at his team, just calm certainty. That kind of certainty doesn't come from rumors. It comes from knowing. And perhaps that's why this moment continues to linger. Because it didn't give fans everything. It gave them just enough. Enough to understand that whatever Dylan Wang and Shen Yue share, it's not fragile. It doesn't need validation. It doesn't need headlines. It exists quietly, steadily, on their terms. And in a world obsessed with loud love stories, that kind of quiet truth feels almost revolutionary.